This is Dave Meltzer, and welcome to Entrepreneurs the Playbook. I have one of my favorite leaders on the playbook. It is Elizabeth Zucker, YPO and chairman of YPO, which is extraordinary, and managing partner of Interior Investments. Welcome to the playbook, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I've had a few people from YPO. I've worked with YPO for years. I'm now too old for YPO. But I think a lot of people I want to start with as a chairman of YPO don't know about the importance of mentorship, about the aggregate of who you hang out with, about what we learn through the experience, even virtually, of hanging out with people who share or have situational knowledge and relationship capital that we can utilize. Can you give us just a little bit of background on the value that you find in YPO as an organization?
Absolutely. I think a majority of our CEOs join YPO seeking peerdom. Specifically, they want to be with others like them. So those in which were successful at an early age. You mentioned you're too old for a YPO. It's funny, we often get challenged about our age barrier. And one of the things that I feel like makes YPO unique is that it's success at an early age. That being said, a huge part of joining YPO is embracing lifelong leadership and lifelong learning. So if you don't want to grow, you're not a fit for YPO. We join at a young age with success at a young age, but oftentimes fail somewhere in between many, many times. And I think through those failures is where you get the most out of YPO, the current crisis being a perfect example.
Yeah, I wasn't humble enough. I was super successful. Probably could have qualified by 24, but that's probably why I lost over $100 million. Is I'm like, there's one of the mistakes that I made, the lessons, and that's why I promote to so many of the people that I executive coach to join YPO, because I didn't have any help. Right, I felt as if I was Midas, and everyone else would slow me down. I just didn't know what I didn't know, and now through radical humility, really try my best to encourage people to understand, gain their awareness, and participate in what you do. One of the things that you guys have, by the way, thousands of executives, in case people don't know, around the entire world. I think 124 countries YPO is in. You have been exposed to a tremendous amount of leadership qualities. And so many people want to know how to become successful at a young age. What are some of the key common traits or characteristics that you see within your members as far as leadership goes?
I think humility is one of them. And because when you're surrounded by peers who are all successful, you mentioned feeling like Midas at 24. Many of our members probably join feeling like the king of the hill, right? But then when you get put in a group full of 29,000 plus CEOs, it's all relative. There's always someone much more successful than you are. And I don't think it's about how much you have or how much you've made or how big your organization is. It's about being your best self. And you mentioned surrounding yourself with those that, I think you used the phrase that you're a combination or you're an accumulation of those that you surround yourself with. And I think that sums up YPO. If you surround yourself with great leaders and great people, not only people that are successful in business, but people that are successful in life. And a huge part of our focus organizationally has been impact. So it isn't just about helping yourself and helping your employees or your family, your spouse, partner. It's also about building up the community in which you live in and leaving it better than when you found it. I think it's a huge, huge part of who we are as an organization and something I'm certainly most proud of.
It's so interesting because people ask me what advice I would do or would give to my kids, since I'm around advice a lot of the time. And one of the key components I told my wife, I said, the only reason I'd ever move if my kids were around the wrong friends. So my mom used to tell me, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And I think it's a tagline for YPO. One of the other things that I've learned from, you know, older groups of executives as I participate now in the multiple mentorship things as a mentor myself, but I've always carried at least 3 different mentors in my life and organizations in my life to allow me to have that humility to learn, is routines. One of the common things, especially now that I'm trying to help people with, is now more than ever do you need a routine, because now more than ever you need to develop skills, because things are about to get a lot more competitive for you. And those who are developing skills right now and acquiring knowledge and maintaining or inspiring that must be what they can be attitude are going to succeed. They'll be in the margins of millionaires as we move forward. What are some of the best routine advice that you've seen through 29,000 or more, very successful executives?
I think most successful people have a routine. It's probably a common ingredient if you dig a little deeper. And some people's routines start very early in the morning, and some people's routines might start later. But I think all successful people have some sort of a process or a recipe to success. I think that's one of the values that you get being surrounded by 29,000 plus CEOs. You get to learn what works for others and maybe apply or try something new or different that you haven't tried before. May or may not work for you, but there's this safe haven of trust within YPO where you can really try new things and be vulnerable without that fear of failing, because it's pretty much a no judgment zone, which is very, very unique. You had talked about leadership attributes previously. One of the things I was thinking about is in our own businesses, oftentimes as we lead them, I think this idea of servant leadership, it's a very talked about word, right? It's a buzzword. And I think it takes a while to really understand what it means to be a servant leader. And so one of the components of YPO that I cherish the most is this opportunity to volunteer as a leader, or what we call a champion. And you don't get paid, you don't get a discount on your dues for doing it, but where else in the world could you have leadership development where you get to practice on other CEOs? You get to lead leaders. For me, it is the master class. It is the best thing you could ever hope for as a CEO, is to be in a position to lead other leaders and really learn what servitude looks like. I think it changes you. It changes the way that you lead your family, and it changes the way you lead your business as a result.
Yeah, that shift in the paradigm, at least for me, was the recovery catalyst for my entire life. I actually wrote a book called Compassionate Capitalism that I now tend to see myself as a ferocious Buddha in my attack in things. The interesting thing that you said, I do hundreds of these interviews and extraordinary people. And I've always been under the misperception that all successful people wake up early. And you mentioned people have routines that start early or late. And that's really interesting to me, because I think maybe once again, my own traditional perspective comes into play that all great successes, wake up early and get stuff done. Do you see some other things that historically people say, first one into work, last one to leave? Now that we've been in this compressed time and change, do you see, any of these shifts through? Because you're around so many great leaders that there is a new economy, there's a new attitude and a new perspective. And I can see why, as long as you have a routine, you can start it late and still be successful. Are there any other little nuances that, old guys like me, should think about or know that come to mind?
I think the one observation I would share is, and I would say I've noticed this in the last 12 months, but especially in the last 60 days. I think authenticity and transparency are like the most coveted attributes within a leader. I think nobody wants to be talked at or to. They want to be heard, and they want to know what's really happening. And they want candor and honesty, like I said. And I think that those attributes are probably the most important ingredients right now. I hope it stays that way in a post-coronavirus era, because it's refreshing.
Yeah, I would hope so as well. And then I think too, one of the great things I've seen within leaders is not only how they talk to others or communicate to others with that authenticity and the organic nature in which they can illuminate the truth, but also their self-talk. One of the main things that we can control is our mindset, our feelings, what we say and what we hear. But what we hear is so important now because it is really infecting or affecting our self-talk. And this is a great time, this pause, to program ourselves. I keep using the analogy. I feel like somebody came to me after I graduated college or law school and said, hey man, you know what? I'm going to let you go back knowing what you know now. And that's kind of my mindset, and the self-talk that I have is like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like all the things I wish I could restart on, knowing what I know now, the teachers, the fine, all the things I could have done, I can now do in my real life, personal and professional life. What are some of the key things you see or tips you could give in self-talk? Because I think it's so important.
I feel really fortunate. I'm one of those people who wakes up 99.9% of the time with a positive attitude. My glass is always half full. And I know that isn't the case for everyone. Not everyone just feels that energy of that way. I would say exercise is super important. It's a for you talk about mindfulness. There's lots of ways to exercise. It doesn't have to be physical. It could be meditation. I think clearing your head and having focus is essential with as much as we have going on in the world today. We were laughing just this morning about the infodemic that we're experiencing, this barrage. I mean, we thought we consumed a lot of content pre-coronavirus. It's accelerated in my experience in the last 60 plus days. And it's overwhelming to sort through the massive amounts of information that are being thrown at all of us, our children included. And I think that what we have to get really good at going forward to be successful is focus, prioritization, and just really knowing what we're each individually capable of and kind of owning that. I think you got to be okay saying no at some point, right? You have to be okay just being really vulnerable and honest and transparent and letting other people know when you don't have the capacity to engage or be an active listener or you're just overwhelmed. I think this is a unique opportunity where anything goes. And we all ought to think about what are we going to stop doing in the future?
Yeah, and one of those things that are interesting right now is the relationship between business and personal life, in business and people. And on so many different layers as leaders, especially young leaders, when I was a young leader, the biggest difficulty I had, I lived through 93, 97, 2001, and 2008, lost over $100 million in 2008. One of the mistakes that I made is I didn't realize the importance of my business to people, meaning to my employees, to my family. And so I kept making bad business decisions, helping people and weakening my business until finally the dominoes all fell because the business always came last. And then I shifted my paradigm with a compassionate mindset of I'm providing value and service, but I can't provide value and service. And it's interesting because even on a personal level, you brought up health, and all great leaders to me always prioritize their health. Well, I'm one of those people that put family first, activity I got paid for second, and then my health. And what I realized into my 40s was, gosh, if you don't put your health first, you're never going to get there because your family's always going to prioritize itself. How are you advising people, in a difficult decision where you have to sacrifice today some people's personal lives and their challenges for the betterment or the bigger good of staying in business? So hopefully in the future you can hire people back or at least be around, because I learned one thing: people still hated me just later on. I gave so much to keep people in employed, but when the business went under, they just hated me anyway. So that was like the big lesson that I learned.
So in my business, we've been in an unfortunate situation where we've already had to do headcount reductions and salary reductions. We were actually, I think, a week into the shelter in place. That same week, we were forced to make some tough choices. I always look at it, at least this is the way I would just share how I positioned it with our employees as well as with those in which lost their jobs. I feel like when you lead a business, it's your role. You're a matriarch. In my case, I'm a matriarch, right? I have to protect the business to protect the whole. And sometimes that means making tough choices for individual contributors. And I always share that wisdom and I truly do believe when one door closes, another one opens. And it's an inopportune time when the economy is tanking and it feels like you have no ability to go somewhere else to let someone know that their job is no longer going to be there, but you have to protect the whole. And if you just look at each individual, I don't know that success is going to be the outcome. And those are always really tough choices because it never feels good to impact the livelihood of an individual as an employer. It's a terrible, terrible conversation. But I will share one insight, and that's that I'm always just absolutely floored at how unbelievably compassionate and how open individuals are when you have those tough conversations with them. And I was so proud when we did our salary reductions. I had a couple employees come back to me and say, I have more to give. I can live on less. And I mean, who does that, right? I mean, who gets to lead people who are willing to give more of their own, protect the whole? And I think when you can create a community where everyone's in it together and wants to get to that point in which success and the economy and everything's coming back, that's where you really feel like you're a part of something spectacular and you're creating value for all of your employees and your customers.
Yeah, that is, I have had the same experience. I'm so blessed not to have had to have a roll count or a reduction being in the business we're in, but had a few young people, it made me so proud, come to me and say, hey, if you don't want to pay me bonuses, I totally understand. Like out of nowhere. And just I go out. Anyway, I wish I had you as my leader of leaders when I was searching through my 20s, 30s, and even into my 40s, and really appreciate the perspective of seeing so many different stories, so many different businesses and business issues. I believe life's about lessons, and lessons are going to keep on coming till we learn them. I love, it would be missed if I didn't ask you for your biggest lesson during this compressed uncertainty, this accelerated change. What's that one big takeaway, either personally or professionally, that you're like, wow, I still have a lot to learn myself?
I would say a couple things come to mind. First and foremost, I am in this fortunate moment in time where I get to see the whole within YPO. So I get to see the individual contributions of our members and our management team, which is a unique opportunity. And I've always, I started at the beginning talking about this idea of a community of peers. I couldn't have given you specific examples. I could give you 20 right now of incredible acts of kindness that our members have done for one another, or maybe someone who isn't a member. It isn't about them being in our organization. It's if just helping each other out, that willingness to give whatever and not wanting anything in return for the gift. And I have been blown away at just the acts of kindness and humanity that I have seen from incredibly successful people who probably could just hide out in their homes and shelter in place and wait it out. They don't have to be actively engaged in helping others, but they're choosing to be. And for me, it's like the greatest inspiration in the entire world. And I would then lead to the next one, which is having the ability to share those stories with my children. Even just this collapsing of no separation of space, no balance in this time of everyone cohabitating under a single roof and just seeing everything happen. One of my three children asked me why he was really funny. One evening, I must have just maybe not been quite myself, and he said, he asked me what was going on, and I mentioned that we were going to be doing salary reductions and headcount reductions. And he said, well, you're not reducing your income, are you, mommy? And I said, well, of course I am, honey. I said, leaders lead by example. Absolutely. He goes, but you're the boss. You don't have to do that. And I said, exactly. That's why you do it. You do more. You give more. That's where you get the most out of people, is by leading by example. And it was just a really we've had so many interesting conversations that we would have never had they been in their normal routine, their normal activities and school day activities, because they're a part of my work journey right now too, right? Because they're seeing it and hearing it. And, when I say, hey, listen, you can't come and interrupt a Zoom conversation, we're doing layoffs, or, these are tough things that younger children probably don't even grasp, right? Yeah. But I wonder if they're not learning more actually at home right now than they would be in a school building, because these are life lessons, and they're going to stick with our children for many years to come, just seeing what's going on around them.
I feel the same way. And no surprise that you're seeing those acts of kindness, because that's, in my opinion, and why I wrote the book, why those people and how they got there is putting others first and being those servant leaders and merchant servants and compassionate capitalists. But it's so great because you just supported my biggest statement in life, which is be kind to your future self and do good deeds. And you have lived as an exemplary leader, and now leading others to lead in the same respect is just such a blessing that we have people like you that are so instrumental in our own survival right now, our maintenance of what we're doing, and also the future where we're going to have to really rely and lean on people like you for the perspective and the ferocious Buddha-ness to put the free will to work the hours, whether you wake up early or late. I've learned that now too. But Elizabeth Zucker, the chairman of YPO, thank you so much for joining me and giving me such a great playbook to kindness and success.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your time with me. This has been a treat.
You're awesome. This is Dave Meltzer with Entrepreneurs, the Playbook.